Okay, my name is Brent Brunson, and I'm from Baytown, Texas, which is a suburb of Houston, Texas. And I have uh, I've owned a company there in Houston for over 30 years, which I recently sold. I was in the graduation business, and for the last 10 years, I have done a country music act. I do George Strait's tribute act. Uh, Actually play with this band from time to time, but that's what I'm doing now. So I'm currently semi-retired and currently living right now. You're speaking to me now from a home that I have in a place called Ruidoso, New Mexico. That's where I am now. Okay, well, basically, Matt, I've got two adult children in the Salt Lake, Utah area. And like I said, I do a country music act. I've got a big tour bus that I travel in the summer. And for the last several years, we have made it a point to go by and pick up the grandkids and go to Bear Lake, basically. And we've always gone to a place called Garden City, Utah. And on August the 9th, 2018, we didn't go this past summer because of my schedule, but on August the 9th, 2018 was the last time they were there. And when we have attended there, we've always stayed in a KOA there and gone to go tubing and go wakeboarding. My son likes to wakeboard. And on August the 9th, 2018, we were out in the lake. It was mid-afternoon, probably, and we were not close to the shore at all. We were way out in the middle of the lake on the Utah side, and there wasn't any traffic. Probably there wasn't a boat within probably 2 miles of us. My son had fallen, and we had stopped the boat. I was driving the boat. My daughter-in-law was there. My adult daughter was there. And then I had 4 grandchildren on the boat with me. But my son, my adult son, was out on a wakeboard. He had stopped. He had fallen. And so we were sitting still in the water. And basically, we were just sitting there, and I'm sitting at the driver's seat. And I looked out in front of the boat about, probably 30, maybe 30 yards, and I saw a big wave, a whitecap. And I thought to myself, what in the world would cause a wave when there's no boat traffic or anything like that? And then immediately after that, I watched something come out of the water the first time. And I would say, Matt, I'm just guessing, but this whole experience probably lasted maybe 20 seconds, 20 or 30 seconds. I wish I'd had the clarity of mind of grabbing my iPhone and taking a picture or video, but of course I was so shocked that above the weight, probably I saw 4 to 5 feet of this animal, and my first thought was, this is fresh water. And I grew up, on the coast, Gulf of Mexico coast, and I said, there's no whales shouldn't be a well in this lake, but I saw this, whatever it was, come out of the water, go down in the water, come up again. It did it 3 times. The second time that it came out, my daughter said, Dad, look, what is that? So anyway, this thing comes up, goes down. Now this thing was black. There was no scales. It looked shiny, like a tortoise or maybe like a shark or a tortoise, but this thing had to be probably at least 40 feet long. I didn't see any, it just went up, went down, went up, and down. I did this 3 times, and we were totally shocked. My grandkids and my daughter-in-law, they were facing the other direction. They were sitting in the front of the boat, looking back the other direction. But my daughter and I both saw this, and immediately what I did when this thing went back down in the water the 3rd time, I said, well, I'm going to try to get closer. So I started the boat up. I said, Lance, let go of the rope. And so I ran that direction. And of course, that was the end of it, but basically we can't describe what we saw, other than when I turned the boat in that afternoon, I asked the guy at the marina, I said, hey, tell me something. I said, I saw something today on the lake I can't explain. And the guy was real nice. He said, well, tell me what you saw. And I told him what I saw. And he said, look on the wall. And so I looked on the wall, and there was a a newspaper article, and I don't remember, Matt, it's still there. You could go to that marina and look. But they said in 2013 there was a sighting, and he said, you saw the Bear Lake monster, is what he basically said. And I've never heard of a Bear Lake monster, So I get back to Houston. I was in a church meeting the following Sunday, and I got back to Houston, and I wanted to tell this fish story. It was basically a fish story to me, and I was waiting for the church leaders to come in and start the meeting. And basically, there was a young man in that meeting that grew up on Bear Lake. He was from Utah. He went to Brigham Young University, and he basically told me. He said, we call each other Brother and Sister Brunson in the church. He said, Brother Brunson, he said, my folks have had a cabin there on that lake the whole time I grew up. And this guy's probably 35 years old. And he said, we always heard about this, but no one in my family has ever seen it. He said, you saw the Bear Lake monster. It was August. It was my anniversary. So my wife keeps a journal of everything we do, but it was on my anniversary in 2018. It wasn't this past August. It was a year from August is basically when it was. And one thing I might add, Matt, this thing looked like a giant, like an eel or a snake, but this thing was huge. Okay. All I could see when it came up out of the water and then it went back down, all I could see was probably 4 to 5 feet of the exposed body. Okay. But there was no, like I say, no scales. It was black. It was smooth. The skin was smooth. And there was no dorsal fin. I think I've already mentioned that. No dorsal fin. And there wasn't any, I didn't see any, I don't think the thing was coming up for air necessarily, but this thing came up, went down, came up, went down, did it 3 times. And after the first time, my daughter was looking the same direction I was, and she said, oh my gosh, Dad, what is that? Look at that. What is that? And we were shocked. We couldn't explain it. Never. I grew up not too far from Galveston, Texas, and I've been deep sea fishing. And I do a lot of saltwater fishing and seen anything that big. I've even been whale washing. Last summer, I took my family. We went to see the killer whales and whatever. But I've never seen anything like that at all. That would be that big that would come up out of the water, back down, up down to the water. But like I say, I did it 3 times, and I tried to move the boat up probably, the direction this thing was going. It was always, this fish was, whatever it was probably, he was probably 30 yards in front of us, which is pretty close. And he was going, my boat was pointed straight ahead, and he was going turning. I tried to figure out where there, and we didn't see anything. We sat there for several minutes, didn't see anything. So this thing was a solid bodied, looked like a whale without a fin or without a dorsal. It just was smooth, came up and down. And this thing, like I say, I'm guessing it could have been 30 feet long. It could have been 50 feet long. I'm guessing the thing was, I was in a 30-foot boat, 28, 29-foot boat, probably 30 or 40 feet long, from just watching, how thick the thing was and whatever. But no, I'm very familiar with elk. I'm talking to you now from a home that I have in Rio Dosa, New Mexico, and I wake up every morning to cow and bull elks in my yard. So there wouldn't be an elk out there fishing in the middle of the lake, 3 miles or 4 miles from the edge of the lake. We were way out, almost to the other side. We were way out in the middle of the lake. It wasn't an elk, and it wasn't a school of fish. This was a solid animal. Best thing I can say is it looked like a whale to me coming up out of the water. And unless there's some kind of freshwater whale that we don't know about, but it could be explained that way. But I know what I saw. Okay. No, well, we saw, before this thing ever came out of the water, I saw like a wave, maybe 3 or 4 feet, and then almost kind of white capped a little bit. Growing up on the coast down here, we have constant motion of waves, like in Galveston, Texas, or if you go down to Corpus Christi. I spent a lot of time in all these places, but it looked like a wave. In this, of course, the afternoon we were out there, it really was pretty smooth. It wasn't glassy. The water wasn't glassy, but it wasn't choppy either. The water was pretty smooth because we were, tubing, and my son was wakeboarding on the lake. And that's what kind of stunned us at first, to see this wave of water come up before the thing ever came up. So we couldn't figure out what was making the wave. And then we saw what we saw. When we weren't able to go this summer, Matt, I'll end with this. I thought to myself, I'm not sure I want to take my grandkids out there on the tube. We would stop in the middle of the lake and jump out in the lake and go swimming and all this stuff. Whatever this was big enough. This thing was big enough to swallow somebody, So I'm not sure. I'll probably go back. I'm not saying not to go to the lake, but I can't tell you what we saw. If there's a Bear Lake creature or whatever it is, or some type of whale or some type of animal in that lake, I know what I saw. So it's one of these mysteries, one of these mysteries. I appreciate you doing this deal, but I've told my friends about it. But basically, the day that we checked this boat back in, the guy at the marina, he was a young college-age kid. He had just served a mission for the Mormon Church, and he told me, he said, you really need to report this. And I thought, I said, well, who would anybody? So, well, they'll think I'm crazy or whatever. But so I guess the way that we found out about your documentary is my daughter-in-law must have seen it. Maybe it was in the newspaper or posted or something, and she immediately called my wife, and she said, hey, but tell Dad that there's somebody doing a documentary, and now he can report, what he saw a year and a half or 2 years ago. So that's how I found you. But we never did call anybody or anything like that. Like I say, I had this kid tell me that he'd grown up on the lake there, had his parents had a house there, said that he had always heard this, but no one in his family had ever seen anything, but they had a lot of people tell them or tell his family members that there was I guess a rumor or a legend or whatever you want to call it. Sitting right there in the little compartment behind the steering wheel of the boat, I wish I'd have grabbed that thing. If I'd have had the clarity of mind to grab it and maybe get a picture or maybe take a little video after the first time. But man, this whole experience probably lasted 20, 30 seconds, and you're just not thinking at 20, 30 seconds, I was so trying to figure out what I was looking at that I didn't even think. And after the fact, I said, man, should have got it on video, but I didn't.